Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Aimpoint Acro P2. Some of you may be a little surprised by this video because I said I wasn't going to do one. I was still going to get one, I was still going to evaluate it, but I hadn't planned on filming it. But enough people asked, social media, various, Instagram, YouTube, what have you, that I figured I'd go ahead and film it. As some of you don't know, I don't film every optic evaluation I do, because I just don't have the time. But if you are interested in optics that don't make the video, or if you want round counts that go above what I usually do in the video, which is 2,000 rounds, you can check out the latest edition of the Sage Dynamics white paper on red dots for law enforcement self-defense purposes, which you can find on sagedynamics.org. You just scroll down. It's a downloadable PDF. It's updated a couple times a year with the latest numbers, latest information about optics, optics failures, and optics successes. So here's your video, 2,000 round review process on the Acro P2. If you're curious on my feelings of the Acro, the original, the P1, you can check out that video. There's actually two videos on that one. There's a 2,000 round review and a 10,000 round update. I don't know if I'll be doing a 10,000 round update on this one, but who knows, maybe, maybe not. But that'll give you some idea of my feelings on the Acro and what I felt were some of its shortcomings or where it could have been improved prior to being released to the public. Aimpoint listened, not necessarily to me, but they did listen to the shooting community in general, and they released a P2 actually pretty quickly, considering how recently, in the grand scheme of things, the P1 came out, with updates to the features, updates to the battery, and some other general updates to, well, the overall function and form of the optic itself to give people, well, what they wanted. If you are not familiar with the Acro P2, it is the handgun-centric optic that is available from Aimpoint. The latest version, the one we're going to talk about in this video, is the P2, which has a significant, one of the major departures for me is it changes the battery, which I'd been hoping for, because the previous P1 took a different battery which did not have the same longevity that we're used to from Aimpoint battery life. So now we're getting a 2032 battery as opposed to the previous battery, which gives us a significantly increased battery life over what the P1 would have offered. So in keeping with what we generally look for from Aimpoint, we're getting 50,000 hours of battery life quoted with a 3.5 MOA dot with Aimpoint's new LED emitter, which does provide a very consistent clean dot. I don't necessarily know if it's better than previous LED offerings from Aimpoint and their red dot sights. However, it's definitely a good, crisp, clean dot. Over the 2,000 round review process, I didn't notice any flickering, any fading, any issues that would arise in certain situations that I might otherwise notice. Varied light conditions, things like that. Of course, we've got a number of brightness settings available for that. 10 brightness settings, 4 of those are going to be night vision compatible, and 6 of them are going to be daylight settings. These things can get very bright. In fact, this is probably one of the first optics, and off the top of my head, the only one I can really think of that can actually get way too bright for daytime use, which I actually really appreciated, because it's nice to be able to turn things up to 11. Not literally, it doesn't have 11 settings, but I mean, figure of speech. Turn things up to 11 just in case, based on whatever kind of lighting condition you may encounter. It's nice to have that. As far as the night vision features go, I did test those out throughout the review process, shooting this thing under night vision. However, I'm not a night vision setting kind of guy when it comes to red dots, because my consideration is this. If I'm using a red dot and a night vision setting, and I suddenly have to transition from a night vision environment to a white light or a natural light environment, I don't want to have to fiddle around with buttons. So I generally leave my optic on the same brightness setting regardless of what I'm doing with it, because even though under night vision a daytime setting or a low light setting would be brighter than I need for the actual use of the night vision for passive aiming, I can still see the dot, I can still aim, I can still polarize my target if I have to with an IR capable light. And I have that added benefit of not needing to, when I transition from night vision to white light, also having to mess with buttons. That being said, the night vision settings are excellent. They provide a very clean, crisp, consistent dot. Sometimes you notice things under night vision that you wouldn't notice otherwise. One of those things being refresh rate. And do I get any flicker, any fading in that dot when I'm using kind of a near IR environment type light magnification system? I'm happy to report that I didn't have any of those problems. The first 500 rounds was kind of just getting to know you. I wasn't expecting any great departures over what I got from the original Acro. And I don't want this video to be a comparison to the original Acro, but people are going to bring up a lot of the questions of, well, I have a P1, why do I need a P2? And we'll kind of get into if you actually do or not as we go throughout their video. But this first 500 rounds, we're just seeing if there was any significant departures from previous iteration, and just how does the optic stand on its own merit. A lot of people allude to the size. It's not considerably larger or larger at all than some of the other optics that are out there. It just appears larger to the eye because it is an enclosed emitter, which is a significant advantage in certain environments over your open emitter type optics. Me personally, for concealed carry, either one is going to be great. There's nothing that an enclosed optic is going to do significantly better for concealed carry concerns that open versus closed. You're not really going to see that huge difference. For duty or open carry, adverse environment carry, whatever you want to call it, enclosed emitters really shine in the fact that you're less likely to get debris, foreign media, moisture into the optic itself, which can get on the emitter window and cause refraction or blockage of your LED. As far as fogging goes, 1 lens, 2 lenses, 4 lenses, 6 lenses, everything can fog up if not properly treated. So it's really more of a weather protection and an overall rigidity that can be added to the optic itself versus some kind of magical situation where by being enclosed, suddenly you don't have to deal with any of the problems that are presented by meteorology. The footprint is Aimpoint's own like cross bolt footprint. So you need to have an adapter plate or you need to have a gun milled. No big deal there, really. I know a lot of people want there to be one true footprint, and I just don't think that's going to happen. It was nice to see that eventually became the thing when it comes to rifles, either Weaver or 1913 Picatinny. But with handguns, I don't really see that becoming a thing. It would be nice, at least for enclosed emitters, to have one standardized footprint. But again, I just don't think we're going to see it. Luckily, we are going to have a few versus a bunch. We're already starting to see people are already using other people's footprints as opposed to coming up with their own, and that's definitely a good thing because it means you've got options with one particular footprint versus another one. So from concealed carry or from duty carry, it mounted up easily, and then working it through into my normal drills, my normal practice, dot acquisition is definitely there. Some people allude to the fact that the Aimpoint is more assistive when it comes to acquiring the dot, because if you press out and you don't see your reticle, you have that tunnel effect. Very faint, but it's definitely noticeable because it is an enclosed emitter optic, so you do have those two, objective lens and optic lens. They can use that tunnel, if you will, to kind of adjust and find that reticle. It's not something I necessarily notice because of the way that I acquire my dot, more of a natural presentation, more eye-hand coordination assisted versus the optic itself leading me to find the dot, but I can see how that could be beneficial to some shooters, so that's definitely going to be a plus for people who kind of train in that camp of dot acquisition. Once your target focus, the reticle is excellent. I generally like reticles smaller than this. I don't like 3.5, I'll be honest with you. I prefer 2 or 1. If somebody made a half MOA, I'd probably buy it. Because, and this is one of the huge significant advantages to red dot shooting, when I'm target focused, my non-dominant eye is finally doing something. A lot of people get taught to shoot both eyes open, both eyes open, both eyes open. When you shoot both eyes open on iron sights, you are front sight focused, which means your other eye is picking up non-focused blur, light, and shape information, but it's not helping you or aiding you in any significant way versus what it does with target focus. With target focus, both eyes are downrange and only one eye has a gun in front of it. So you pick up way more target data than you might even realize that you're getting. That's a huge advantage, and the smaller the dot, the more you see around the reticle versus just what's above it or what's beside it. So the smaller the reticle for me, the more of my target I get to see when those two eyes kind of combine that information in my brain. 3.5 is fine though, and this dot seems to be very true to size. I don't have and again, this is a sample size of 1, but I don't have any extra blooming or halos or starbursts or anything like that we do see from some reticles from model to model to model to model, depending on what type of LED emitter they use. So after the first 500 rounds of the just getting to know you, getting to feel for the gun, I mounted it on a Agency Arms Sage Edition Glock 45 comp gun. One, for weight purposes. I wanted to see if the added weight would cause any issues with that particular gun, which I wasn't really worried about, but if weight was going to be an issue with this optic, it would identify it on that type of firearm, because some comp guns can be a little bit more finicky when you start adding more weight to the slide. Again, caveat, I did not think, or disclaimer I should say, I did not think the weight was going to be an issue because we purposely designed the Sage comp to not really present problems like that versus some other comps that are out there. But I had to put it on something, and I like shooting this gun, and I had AOS plates available for the Acro footprint, so that's exactly what I did. After the first 500 rounds, we get to, the drop test, of course, every 500 rounds, we get to the burn down, which is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if an accelerated round count of 500 rounds will identify problems that we wouldn't notice with the same round count over a much longer period of time. So 4 or 5 minutes versus 4 to 5 hours, days, weeks, months, etc. Here's your burn down. I really wasn't expecting anything with the burn down, mainly because burn downs hardly ever identify problems on handgun-centric type stuff as far as optics and lights and things like that go, because there just isn't enough heat generated when compared to like a rifle. Or we're not doing something that's directly involved in the cycle of fire, say like a suppressor. That doesn't mean I haven't identified problems in the past with optics, but this isn't one of those situations where I was too terribly worried about it. I was mainly looking at how it was going to handle the reciprocation, if we're going to identify any issues in there, because there's a lot of G-forces taking place, and 500 rounds of G-forces in that short period of time could maybe potentially identify any issue. But then again, we're talking about Aimpoint here. So I was expecting no issues, but I was perfectly happy to kind of encounter one. If I wouldn't say happy, I was perfectly ready to encounter one if I did. Happy to report 500 rounds, pretty boring, no issues whatsoever. After that, I just, for the last 1,000 rounds, just enjoyed using the Acro for my normal shooting. Got in some low light, got in some more night vision time with it. The reticle is consistently boring. The brightness settings are excellent. Some brightness settings are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Vague. You press it and you press the up to get it to go brighter, and it doesn't seem to really get much brighter. And then you hit it like 9-10 times and it gets a little bit brighter. I think that they've got the right output settings per setting to give you the brightness availability that you're going to need. Like I already talked about, it does get super bright. But their middle of the road settings, say coming down, to setting 7 or setting 6, are perfectly usable for all the light conditions you're going to use. Most of the review I had it on setting 8, but I also used it quite a bit on setting 7, and it was perfect for all the lighting environments. So literally, I'd be on the range when the sun was still up, it would get dusk, then it would get dark, and then I would use night vision all in the same period, all in the same setting, and it was all perfectly usable. So it's nice to know that I can hit the setting, go to work. The buttons are not recessed per se, but the aesthetics and the overall design of the body lends itself well to protecting those buttons from inadvertent contact. So that's definitely an advantage there for people who aren't, or people who are going to be concerned about or not locking out or not otherwise protecting their buttons from the environment or their own personal gear or whatever they happen to be wearing or the method in which they carry. Of course, a word on the body design. I know everybody's waiting for the drop test, but a word on the body design. One of the issues I identified with the P1 is how the sacrificial lens didn't have a good recess to it. Rear lens didn't have a good, significant, noticeable recess to it. On the P2, the recesses are a little bit more significant, which I think is going to help protect that lens from less inadvertent or less specific types of contact with the environment. That front lens is replaceable, and to my eye, it looks like it's going to be easier to replace. I don't know if I'd technically call it user replaceable yet, but the option would definitely potentially exist if Aimpoint was going to be making that available. It looks like it's something you could do yourself, although I don't know if Aimpoint's actually going to be selling those front lenses, sacrificial lenses, if that's what you want to call them. It's what I'm going to call it, because it's what it is to me. In order for you to be able to replace it yourself, you may still have to send it in, which in that case, it doesn't really matter to you if it's going to be easy or not, because you're not going to be the one doing it. But the body does lend itself well to the overall, I guess, intent of the optic. It is a robust design that doesn't seem to be too worried about aesthetics, although it is a little bit more pleasing to the eye if that's something you're worried about. It seems to be more for the function and the protection of the optic itself, both the front lens, that objective lens, and that optical lens. Some more thought went into executing that. Adjustments, of course, are another thing we got to talk about. They still are Torx. They use the traditional Aimpoint wrench, so you can't just pick up a 9mm casing or something like that and make your adjustments. You do have to have a Torx tool in order to do it, but they do have the over travel protections built into them, which we saw in the later generations of the P1. I definitely checked that out. I went to limited travel to see if I could over travel or unscrew those those adjustments, and I could not. So it's good to see that that's in there, just in case you get lost during the zeroing process. You don't want to back out your adjustments and then have to send the optic in to get fixed. That's embarrassing. So we definitely don't want that, and Aimpoint's definitely helping us out there. Of course, another part of my testing that I usually at least talk about in the video, there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't make the video because it's kind of boring, like heat and cold testing and stuff like that. But one-handed manipulations is something we've always taught in defensive type handgun shooting. If you only have one hand available because of injury or circumstance, you can use the optic itself, or back in the day we'd use the rear iron sight, to manipulate the slide of the gun if you have to reload, work a malfunction, whatever. So it's something I include in my testing, and optics definitely make the world a lot easier because there's a much bigger ledge of purchase there, but you are also using the primary method of aiming to manipulate the gun. So is that going to cause zero issues, or going to cause mounting issues, or can it cause damage to the optic? So I do a lot of one-handed manipulation testing throughout the 1,000 round process, 2,000 round process, and throughout my review process in general that continues on long beyond what 2,000 rounds you're going to get in a video. No issues, kind of boring in that regard. It did cause some marring and some cosmetic issues on the finish, which is something I've never really cared about, especially being this aluminum body, and that 7075 aluminum is not going to rust just like any other aluminum. So yeah, I did kind of spec it up a little bit here and there, especially doing drop tests on concrete or flagstone. And then manipulating off some hard objects occasionally, you can kind of mar or scratch the finish. Not something I particularly care about because my guns are not prom queens, neither are my optics. I don't want to intentionally mess them up, but they get worn through use anyway. And of course, we get to the drop test. I do a drop test, shoulder height drop test, every 500 rounds. So in a video of 2,000 rounds, you're going to get 4 drops. After every drop test, I do an accuracy check. What I'm going to show you now is a 5-round group I fired before I did the first drop test. This was actually right after zeroing for a zero confirmation. 5-round group fired on an ANC Arms modified Glock 45. So from 25 yards, that's what my zero's looking like, shooting 124 grain gold dot. And then every 500 rounds, I did my drop test. Throughout the drop test, did not identify any issues. I didn't break anything. I didn't have the optic come loose. I didn't have anything start floating around inside the enclosed emitter, which is something that some people have said on the internet that they've had happen to them. Again, this is my sample size. I'm not going to speak about what's happened to other people because I have no idea how it occurred. But at least for me, I didn't really have anything really occur. I didn't have any issues. I did, again, have some marring and some scratches and whatnot on the finish. Don't really care about that. But of course, the big question is, did it maintain zero? Here is a 5-round group fired after the final drop, 25 yards, 124 grain gold dot. And there you go, zero maintained. In fact, the zero was maintained after every drop, which is the boring reliability I would expect from Aimpoint. The Acro P2, did we need it? We absolutely did need it. Some people would argue that point, but I also think a lot of people, and again, I didn't mind the P1, I just hated the battery life. The rest of the stuff I could deal with. But the battery life to me just seemed like such a departure from Aimpoint's standard behavior that people started making excuses for it. And I'm like, well, every other optic that's worth carrying doesn't have this issue. Why Aimpoint? Especially Aimpoint being the brand and the pedigree that it is. And do you absolutely have to have an Acro P2? No, but if you got a P1, get rid of it, get this. If you're interested in an enclosed emitter, this is definitely should be on your short list of ones to consider. It's certainly going to be the one that's going to provide at least the same degree of reliability or better than what you're going to get from other enclosed emitter optics that are currently out there. Although this is the greatest time to be alive, and I'm sure it's only going to get better in pistol optics because we don't only have 1 or 2 choices. We have a lot of great choices out there. As far as the Acro P2 goes, it is an excellent choice, especially if you are brand loyal to Aimpoint or if you are expecting to have that same Aimpoint quality, but now on a handgun with the battery life you come to expect from Aimpoint products. It's not just about the battery life, but that's a huge bonus over the P1, because to be perfectly fair, there isn't significant increases in functionality or performance over the P1, except for battery life, arguably the ergonomics, the adjustments. For me, the big thing was, okay, I want more battery life. I don't have to worry about it. I don't want to think about what setting I'm on. And the P2 definitely allows me to do that. So again, this is one of the reasons why I wasn't even planning on making a video on the P2, because it's not significantly different from the P1, and the P1's a great optic, except for some of those small little nags that I have as far as battery life goes. The P2 is pretty much just a different design, different button layout, better battery life. So it's what we probably should have got to begin with, but you know what? It's here now, and if you didn't bother to buy P1, you'll never know what it was like to have your battery die on you randomly. Acro P2, excellent optic, good for concealed carry, good for duty carry. The size is not nearly as bad as people make it out to be, and the mailbox joke is getting kind of old. But if you want to keep saying it and thinking you know you're original and you're the first person to say it, I guess cool. I mean, everybody needs a hobby, right? Acro P2, excellent. Do you absolutely have to have it? No. If you want an enclosed emitter optic, you don't already have one, this should be on your list of optics to consider. I'm Eric Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.